very soon came to be predicted that he would marry again. And there were at least a dozen young women of whom one may say that it was by no fault of theirs that, for 6 months after his return, the prediction did not come true. For in Perdita's eyes he felt an echo of Viola's, and the echo, growing louder, did deafen him to the songs of others. They were married, as was becoming, with great privacy, almost with secrecy. During the first 3 years of their marriage, the new Mrs. Lloyd failed to become a mother in her own right. And her adopted daughter refused at every turn to see her as a mother.
Okay, so this isn't explain the lake. Creepy. I mean, if her sister's the one that murders her, karma for you. I mean, you killed her. I know she was being a bitch.
Arthur, on his side, suffered heavy losses of money. She had long since ascertained that her sister's immense wardrobe had been sequestered for the benefit of her daughter, and that it lay languishing in thankless gloom in the dusty attic. It was a revolting thought that these exquisite fabrics should await the commands of a little girl. And thus, on the 6th anniversary of Viola's death, Perdita had reached her limit.
Again?
The house is in disrepair. Our financials a disaster. We cannot even afford a housekeeper anymore, and above us locked away are silks, jewels, and linens.
Perdita.
If not enough to save us, enough to right the ship.
No.
She would want us to. If she could have foreseen how dire things would become, how dire you have made things.
Me?
Yes. But were you not responsible for our financials, dear husband? Did you not run our estate into the damned ground? She would have done anything, everything in her power to save the manor, and you know that.
'Tis for Isabel.
The manor is for Isabel. And we would let it fall to ruin before she comes of age.
Once and for all, Perdita. It is out of the question, and I shall be gravely displeased if you return to the matter.
Very good. Glad to learn the value at which I'm held. To feel oneself sacrificed to a caprice.
It is not a caprice, my dear. It is a promise. An oath.
An oath? We mustn't dispose of an oath to Viola. But what right had Viola to dispose of our future?
I mean, I would assume she died in the attic. Probably stealing all this stuff, but... because that's where she is, but it doesn't explain her sister in the lake. That's what I don't get. She didn't die in the lake. I mean, you plan to steal these things, but where are you gonna tell your husband you got the money? He's gonna know that you stole it. Interesting. I was waiting for the jump scare, but I was not expecting that. Oh, Jesus. How long was she there?
We return, dear listener, to another night. The night in which Viola would sleep. She would sleep. She would wake she would walk. And time went by. How much time, it was impossible to reason. Sleeping. Waking. Walking. Sleeping. Waking. Walking.
Dude, that would drive anybody mad.
And in time, as we all do, she admitted all. She admitted she was dead. She admitted her husband had moved on. She admitted her daughter was growing without her. And she admitted her room was a dream, a construct, a lie preferred to the truth of the trunk. But there waited for her, at the end of this purgatory, a reward in the knowledge that one day the door would open. One day the locks would see their keys, and one day Isabel would open her mother's trunk and claim her reward. Both of their rewards. And day after day, night after night, an ocean of time, the moment finally came.
Except it wasn't her daughter. It was her murderous sister. Eye for an eye, man. No. But explain the lake!
When she beheld her husband, she saw not the changes wrought of time, only his sadness. Only that. And so, overwhelmed, she slept and waited. They buried Lady Perdita and set about forging a new life. The business was empty. The manor was lost. If not in law, in spirit. They would move away from here, sell the manor and find a quieter life, a smaller one, made only for the two of them. The two of them and also Viola. At last, at least, she'd be with them both. Her husband, her daughter. No matter if they couldn't see her, couldn't touch her, couldn't hear her. They were leaving Bly, leaving most of what remained of their belongings. Her reward for all these years of isolation. But
well, they're not going to toss that into the lake, are they?
Man hadn't seen the horror on
That'd be
Perdita's lifeless
stupid.
face.
All those
His
jewels
superstition
and everything in
defied
there.
reason, but he felt confident all the same. Whatever curse had claimed his second wife, he would not risk his daughter to its icy fingers. His daughter, nor anyone else. This final insult of being cast to the swampy depths while her daughter would grow to womanhood. This absolute abandonment. The feeling of being pulled towards some other place, some realm beyond, had faded in the years since her death. But now, she rejected it outright, with every ounce of her considerable will, as when she was sick, and against all probability, Viola would not go. The pull of that next world ignored, she instead made her own gravity. Gravity of will. That would change the terrain of Bly Manor forever. And once again, she would sleep. She would wake.
And she would walk.
She would walk back to her home, feeling each time that it was a dream. Feeling that if she walked to her bedroom, to the room she once shared with her husband, her infant daughter, that perhaps the nightmare would abate, that she could simply slip into the warmth of the blankets and nestle herself to the bosom of her family, waiting for her all this time. And she'd stare at that empty bed, and Viola would remember. And the remembering itself was injury anew, new home.
But why does she strangle people when she walks by if they just happen to be in her path?
And she would forget. She did not even realize that a decade had passed. Not even realize after an outbreak of plague in the village that the empty manor had become a quarantine for the coughing death that ravaged her former community.
Where is she?
What are you doing in here?
It isn't safe. You mustn't be in this wing without protection.
As the plague doctor died, so he was immediately forgotten. A strange phenomenon occurred. Her gravity, it seemed, her invented gravity that held her to the grounds, that kept her in purgatory. It would hold others too. Viola faintly noticed her own attempted exorcism. And alas, the poor vicar, the second person to find himself in Viola's path. She would sleep, forget, and forget, and forget. And with the forgetting, an ailment altogether monstrous. All things fade, all things, flesh, stone, even stars themselves. Time takes all things. 'Tis the way of the world. The past recedes, memories fade, and so, true does the spirit. Wake, walk, forget even more. Her name, forgotten. Her sister's name, forgotten. As her memories left her, so too, her face. So little did she remember that one night she found a child in her daughter's old bed and could not remember who she had been hoping to see. She had only the faint notion that she'd walked this far, hoping to find a child, and here was a child. It must be the child whom she'd sought. It must.
Oh, it's so sad. Is that the body?
She would sleep, and she would fade, and fade, and fade. And the others, too. Those souls held in her orbit. Those unfortunates trapped in the gravity well she had made of Bly Manor. Just need, and loneliness, and rage. Her fate was a nightmare. A fate that befell Viola's once sister, now forgotten in the attic, unaware that she'd ever had a sister at all, to murder or be murdered by. A fate that befell anyone unfortunate enough to step into her habitual path.
Stop. Stop!
A fate that befell a poor
Dani's
valet
in that path.
so many years later. A fate that befell even those who died of other causes at Bly, who found themselves in the grips of Viola's gravity, even if never in the grip of her icy hands. No hope for anyone with the sad misfortune to die on the grounds of Bly. No hope for the victims of Bly, be they victims of fate or vice. And no hope, it would seem, for the young au pair, who, having run afoul of so many of the dead, those unfortunate tenants of the gravity well, and who had finally stepped into the path of her own fate.
You son of a bitch. I watched this episode to find out what happened. I'm sorry if you just heard that. To find out what happened with Dani. And it ended the same way. Oh. Oh. All right, well, we know who the lady in the lake is. Oh my god, my face is like so red. I guess I'm just that mad. So we found out who the lady in the lake is. Her name is Viola. We saw her name once in a previous episode with Flora when she was doing the grave rubbings or whatever. The gravestone rubbings. And yeah, so anyway, she didn't die in the lake. She died from her sister murdering her, because after years of abuse from her sister, let me see, what's her sister's name? Perdita? Prepared? I don't know, whatever. Viola's sister killed her, okay? And I mean, I can understand the frustration of having your once loving sister abuse you when you don't deserve it at all, because all she did for her sister was take care of her. She took care of her sister, she took care of her sister's daughter because she was too ill to do so. But I understand that in Viola's eyes, her sister was kind of just like taking over her life. So I can, and she's sick and she can't be a mom like she wants to be. She can't be a wife like she wants to be. So I understand why she's lashing out. Doesn't make it right, but I get it. And I also get where Viola's sister came from when she killed her sister, because she just had enough. It was enough. The abuse was enough. And so I get it, but neither were in the right. And so years later, like 6 years later, was it? After Viola's sister had married her husband, she went to get into the trunks that Viola had stored away all her jewels and silks and everything to give to her daughter when her daughter was old enough. But she didn't want to wait on all those jewels and stuff because they were in trouble financially. And I guess to her it was ridiculous to keep all this stuff locked away when they could use it, you know, to save the manor and everything like that. And I guess she you know, she sort of had a point, you know, the younger sister. She had a point when she was telling her husband that, you know, Viola wouldn't do anything to save the manor, because that's kind of what she did. Like, that's why she married this guy in the first place, even though he was like her cousin, which, by the way, it's gross. But, you know, there was love between them, I guess. It seemed like there was. So, I mean, she had a point when she was telling him all this, but he refused. He was trying to keep his word. He promised Viola that he would only give the keys to their daughter when she, you know, when it was time. But anyway, so she stole the keys and she went up there to get into it. And her sister, Viola, who had happened to be living in this endless loop that would drive anybody insane, who knew that someday that door would open and it would be her daughter, or at least that's who it was supposed to be. So when it was her sister instead who had murdered her, Viola killed her in return. So yeah, so her sister is the one in the attic. Viola, I didn't understand why she was the lady of the lake. She didn't die in the lake. They didn't toss her body into the lake. It didn't make any sense. But when after Perdita, I'm probably saying her name wrong. I know they're saying it different, just like they're not saying Viola, they're saying it differently. That's just the way I'm saying it, because whatever. Whenever she died, the husband and the daughter, Isabel, moved away. And instead of taking the trunk of jewels and silks and everything with them like they were supposed to, they did a huge insult to her spirit, I guess, and dumped the chest into the lake. So I guess that is in essence her body, because she was kind of living in that trunk, is the way it was seeming. You know, in her dreams, that was where she was, inside that trunk, waiting. And yeah, so she ends up now, I don't know how often, didn't really say how often she would wake and walk, just that she would sleep, she would wake, she would walk. It was repeated like a million times in this episode. And anyway, so whenever she would do that, she would walk to what used to be her bedroom with her husband, or her daughter's room. Not exactly sure anymore. whose room she was walking to. But that explains why she walks to that part of the wing and then she leaves. It's just like she walks to it and then she leaves and goes back into the lake. Like, what the hell? So it explains that. So she goes there hoping to see them, but they're never there, obviously. And so she goes back and she sleeps and she forgets. And then she wakes and she, you know, repeats. And sometimes people get in the way. And apparently she feels that justifies her killing them all. And she even killed that poor little child who happened to just be sleeping in the bed. She took him to the lake. She didn't strangle them like she does everyone else. She just carried them to the lake and drowned them there. So I'm assuming that child is the body in the lake. I don't know if there was more than one. Besides Peter and the skeleton, I don't know if there was any other bodies. I didn't notice. Maybe I'll have to look at that again when I edit. But yeah, so it was very sad. And I don't hold out any hope for Dani. I really don't. I mean, I wish I could. But I don't think so. I mean, who's going to save her? There's nobody there as far as I know besides the children. And one of the children is off, you know, being possessed by an adult. I don't think that Rebecca can do anything. I mean, she is a ghost too, but I don't think she can. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but I have a feeling that this is not going to be a happy ending for Dani, which is really sad. But I hope you guys enjoyed my reaction. If you did, please give this video a like. If you have any suggestions and anything you'd like me to react to, please leave that down below. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.